All right. So, hi everyone. I'm Ashley Benitez-Smith. Just a little background about me. I'm teach at Frederick County Public Schools at Brunswick High. I'm a CTE teacher. Actually started out as an English teacher by trade, but then got, you know, handed a middle school tech ed class and was told to just basically do whatever with it. And then that's how I kind of started my journey to here. So I teach a multitude of classes, including financial literacy, but I also I'm the computer science teacher for my high school. So one of the courses I teach is called Advanced Computing. It's new this year in Frederick County, and it has a focus on kind of web development as well as cybersecurity. So since I'm not the best at JavaScript, I kind of ran with the cybersecurity stuff. And I kind of got into this. It started out as merely a hobby. My husband actually used to work for a DoD contractor. So that's kind of how I've been able to kind of go along, kind of like just tag along on some of his trips to these conferences. And then I started getting into it with teaching and then started, attending them on my own. So it's kind of interesting, the role reversal there, I suppose. But today I just wanted to kind of share my mini unit on election security. And this has been election security research has been in the industry for quite some time, but because of, cease and desist and, other industry stuff and politics kind of getting in the way, it hasn't really come to the forefront until after the 2016 election. So I know, Diane, did you put the link in the chat for the materials?
I did, and in
okay.
The chat just stays there. So there's that bit.ly link to MCCE Vote, where you can get to an amazing wealth of materials that you'll be very impressed with, as was I.
Oh, good. So yeah, if you click that bit.ly link, it will take you right to the resources. And these are all from my digital classroom. So we were actually starting this unit before, the pandemic and the lockdown happened. And my students were really interested to, do this, particular unit. And then we had to shut down for 2 weeks. And then I kind of had to repurpose it for sole, online digital learning, because essentially now we're all in flipped classrooms where we hand out the material and then students come to us, individually for questions. So looking at, I kind of made the first page in that folder is just kind of, or the one that says election security mini unit is where I kind of put all these links as like a one-stop shop. So in there, it has the standards, that it covers. And there could be more standards if, you add more to it, or, you realize you covered another thing. But these are like the main three that I focus on. So like looking at infrastructure, how it can be affected by attacks, evaluating, ethical, social, economic, cultural practices, and implications of privacy in context of law, safety, ethics, which all of this kind of goes into. I guess, should I share my screen now, I guess?
Yes, please.
Okay. So let me get this. Let me share my screen so I can kind of go through this with you. Sorry, it's my first webinar, so there we go. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep, nice and clear.
All right. Fabulous. Okay, so yeah, here you'll see I kind of divided it up between a couple phases. So I have a research phase, and then I go into a machine focus. So the AccuVote TSX, which is made by Diebold Premier Voting Technologies, has been probably the forefront of this research and the most adamant about, I guess, the incredible security that it supposedly has. And then the third part is the actual project, which I kind of dubbed Secure the Vote. So going into the resources, and like I was saying earlier to Diane and Elise, I attended a virtual conference called PancakesCon. Silly name, but it was a virtual cybersecurity conference that was for free, and I was able to join the Slack community, and they pointed me in the direction of a lot of these resources. So it's really thanks to them that these resources, I was able to find. But I kind of split the research up in my class. So they did some like prelim resources just to get familiar with some of the issues that go around with voting and election security. So there's a really great HBO documentary called Kill Chain, the Cyber War in Americans Elections. There's a clip about social engineering where Rachel Toback, she is the CEO of her own company, cybersecurity company, and she actually simulates a social engineering attack to gain access to, voting data and stuff like that, which is a very interesting thing. And then I have different articles about at the DEF CON hacking conference, they actually have a village. They have different areas called villages where they're dedicated to one particular type of security. And they actually have a voting village which focuses on election security and election technology. So there's a few articles about that. There's also about voting by mail, which I know is a very, very big topic because of the pandemic, either pushing back, the primary elections in various states, or in, I guess, New York's case, canceling it. And then there's also, let's see what else. I also put in like the Iowa Democratic Caucus voting app like debacle that happened in February. So I use these prelim ones just as a way to kind of say, hey, here's some of the, issues that we may be talking about. And then I kind of asked in my warm up like some discussion questions, and, students kind of pulled what, they knew or really what really struck them. And then the general research resources. So I, inform my students they could still use the prelim resources, but I gave them more, election kind of security resources here. So, basically any sort of thing I could find. So California actually did a top to bottom review. The then Secretary of State, Deborah Bowden, ordered a comprehensive review of the AccuVote machines that they used and like how elections were done when the University of California basically said, yeah, these are insecure. And they changed their whole election system and what they use because of it. There's also the DEF CON Voting Village report. So after each year and after they have hacked all the machines at DEF CON for the voting village, they then put out a report and put out their findings and recommendations for what industry professionals should do. And then I've also have the MIT Election Data Science Lab, and that's like a big hub for like election, security history. And then I also have a House Administration Committee link, and that is the testimony, Dr. Matt Blaze, who's one of the founders of the DEF CON Voting Village. He teaches at Georgetown. He and a bunch of other industry professionals and experts testified, I think in January in 2020, about this, exact topic. So that's kind of a really good like primary source for students to like watch and look at clips. So once they do that, then I have like a question set where they kind of go through and they use those resources to kind of answer these. I've also added like a couple questions that kind of have to go out a little bit for. So like number 7, why does the state of Maryland use paper Scantron ballots? And why don't we use like all of this, touchscreen technology? And, Maryland actually did a report in 2012, I believe, where they looked at the AccuVote machine and realized it was very insecure. So that kind of goes back to like, the state and stuff like that. And then, kind of getting them to think about solutions, at number 10, what can we do about these machines? So it's in their head. It's not like, I don't like to set up these units to like, shock and scare students going, oh no, everything's insecure, it's doom and gloom. But I really like to, set it up so that, we're always thinking about the solution. We're always trying to problem solve here, because really that's what security is kind of about is, okay, we found the problem, how do we fix it? So then I kind of split this up into 2 parts. Whoops, wrong one. So after they do their research, like they, in a normal, I guess, school year, they would start like completing, a full risk assessment sort of like report. And that just basically runs through like everything that you found. So think of it as like a science report, so to speak, like after, your experiment findings. So first they kind of go into like the history, why they're doing this report, you know, and this kind of mimics a lot of the professional risk assessments and threat models that are done in the industry. So why do you have this report? What's the history of it? You know, what are the current responses and what are the goals you hope to achieve? So I did that as part one to kind of split it up. And then we get into the fun part, which is the machine. So, the second part, I focused, like I said, I focused on the Vote TSX, and just kind of just giving some background information. These machines are very easy to get a hold of. You can get them on various second-rate sellers like eBay and a lot of other like, you know, electronic recycle shops. So there isn't a lot of security to how these machines are handled in general when they decommission one of these. So what I was able to do, I was able to get pictures of a machine that was bought off of eBay from Florida. Go figure. And so then what I do is have the students kind of look through these pictures, look to see what information they can find. I'm just kind of scroll down to the bottom here, you know, and see what they can pick out. So like, for instance, a lot of industry professionals say that they can't connect to the internet, but they can. And, you know, if you click on the right place, you can see, you know, an IP address, a phone number, and a username and password that you can edit depending on what you pick. So they kind of look through this to see the information that can be found on a machine, and none of this was done with any sort of like software. This was all just like turning on the machine and what can I do? What can I, like, you know, just poking around. No software, no nothing, no crazy hacking program. This is all just kind of basic stuff. And the students kind of really like look at that and go, oh wow, you can get to a lot. For instance, in this particular one, you're able to find like voting data for 4 different precincts at 2 different locations. And I kind of went through and I censored the photos of any sort of like potential PII and stuff like that. So, you know, wherever you see this, it's just like, this is what I'll just describe what it is, but none of the information is shown really. So I included that so that students can kind of see, because obviously, you know, you can't go to a museum and you can't like see one of these machines and whatever. You know, especially with digital learning. So that's why that I included this also, so that people could make their own screencasts and kind of talk about what they're seeing to kind of help explain things. But if you also go back to the main page here, I also kind of have a generic video explanation screencast that I made for everybody. So if you don't have time to make your own screencast, because I know, you know, some people are trying to teach their own kids and their students at the same time. You can just kind of throw up this video explanation. It's a wee video, and I just kind of go through and generically like explain like what's on the screen. So if you don't have time to make a screencast, or teachers don't have time to do that, a video link is right there. And then I also included some, let's see, some stuff for the machine, just so that students have a way to kind of look at some of the research that's been done. So like I mentioned before, Rachel Toback, she actually shows a very effective hack where all she has to do is take the card reader, like the voting card slot reader, off of the machine itself, and she can then make it get an error, and then the machine will automatically boot up in admin mode. So that's a little video of her on Twitter there. And then I also made, and kind of a shout out to Norm here, my curriculum coordinator, who kind of he sends out tech tips a lot every day, I think now. And he kind of sent out a tech tip about making your own YouTube playlist. So that was really good. So I made a mini playlist, and this is by no means an exhaustive list of any resource. This is just what I was able to find like in the time I had. I made a mini playlist about videos that students can kind of watch about the machine itself and other kind of election security and voting machines. So the first one is how to actually set it up. This is a video to show poll workers how to set up the machine itself. Just kind of chilling on YouTube. So that's a definite security issue. Then there's a voting demonstration for just, regular people who want to vote on it. And then, I put in a slew of videos about, hacking the machines. ThreatWire has this is a ThreatWire episode where it covers multiple topics, but it also heavily covers the voting machine stuff. And this last video is actually of a young STEM maker. There's a whole community I discovered with, kids basically like sharing what they do in STEM. And this girl is named Bia, or that's her user, what she goes by on the internet. And she actually loves cybersecurity. So Shannon Snubs, who is one of the hosts in this video, the ThreatWire video, actually interviewed her, and she actually gave a talk about election security and what students can kind of do and what solutions that she had in mind. So it's a really good interview, and I think it's really good to show students that there's a lot of young people out there who actually think about this stuff. BSI Lab, that's her full username. And she actually participates in something called Staying in Playing, where a bunch of young makers and STEM students kind of share what they do on Twitter to say, hey, this is what you can do. Here's a science experiment, or here's something you can make on your 3D printer. It's really cool, kind of like maker community. But yeah, so that students can kind of go through that. And then this is taken right from my page that I have in my digital classroom. Then I would link the slideshow and then the video presentation. So then after that, they get back to their risk assessment, and this could be made into 3 parts. Basically, they will analyze the machine based on what they see. They analyze the physical security, the software security. I ask them what information's been compromised, how can it be maliciously used? Because in my class, I don't like to use the word, term hacker as a negative thing. I usually will always try to use the term cyber criminal or attacker, because there's definitely a stigma with the word hacking as being, negative. But really, when you're finding different solutions that are, or you're finding errors and you're trying to solve them, that's not necessarily malicious, unless, you're a criminal. So, and then I ask students what kind, as we move forward, because we're not going to be, paper forever. With the way technology works, what are the solutions? How do we kind of solve this? What are some things we can do, for now? And that can easily be split up into a 3rd part for this. I just kind of, for time purposes and with APs coming through, because most of my class are taking APs this week, I just kind of combine them. And then you could even take this further, maybe having them draft a prototype or something like that. That would be kind of cool. I was thinking about that the other week. And this is one of the student examples that I got for the introductions. I don't have any part 2s yet because, like I said, my students are taking AP exams, so they're not done. But this is what a student kind of wrote for part 1. And I was really I was really impressed with the work I got for part 1 for my students. They really took the time to do the research, to go through the examples, and each of them pick out different examples. So with this student, the DEF CON reports really resonated with them throughout their research, and they reference them a lot. So I'm really excited to see their analysis of it. And they were like, this is not done yet. And I was like, that's fine. But it's really cool to see how they interpret this information and how different all of their introductions were. So I'm really interested to see all their solutions. Yeah, and so basically I'd like to now just kind of turn it over as a collaborative effort, because I'd really like to improve this stuff. This is by no means the definitive election security stuff for high school. So I would be interested to see how this works in different classrooms, because you could do very intro stuff with this. I know in FOCS, our foundations class in Frederick County, we do a mini unit on cybersecurity versus what you could do for AP versus a full-on cybersecurity course. So I'd be interested to hear what everyone else has to think. And that's it really from me.
Nice, thank you. So I'm just curious, what are your students